Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a drink. It is time for some Path of Exile 2 discussion. Today, Grinding Gear Games put out some patch notes and the Trade League economy reacted very fast to them. The value of Fracturing Orbs fell from more than 30 divines to less than 20 within the space of an hour or two after these came out. We'll talk about exactly why that is in a sec, but on top of that, there's a number of other changes that are going on here, including a lot that don't touch on the question of Fracturing Orbs, but that deal with the temple, and a lot of other factors as well. This is 040D patch notes. This is a preview. The patch is not live at the time I'm recording this video, although Grinding Gear Games sometimes put out these patch notes previews very, very close to releasing the patch itself. In terms of overall impact, I would consider this a medium impact patch. 040C was a monumental impact patch. 040C hotfixes 12 and 13 and 14 and 15, they were all high impact patches. This one is what I would term medium impact. Let's get to why, starting with the changes that are Fate of the Vaal League exclusive. Players who are defeated by the Architect or Atziri boss fights now get a sort of second chance at them, but it's a very limited second chance because the rest of the temple is going to be pretty much bricked. So this is going to be similar to the way that endgame maps work. Ultimately, this never feels satisfying at all when it happens. It feels really annoying when it happens, but it's something that's needed because without it, there's a lot of really, really obnoxious abuse cases that you can pull off, and this is something that's intended to keep those in check. So you can now have a second chance against those bosses if you're defeated by them, and that's probably at its best when you're trying to learn those bosses. The thing is that these are not difficult bosses. These are bosses that take quite a while to gain access to, but once you've got access to them, they're very easy to defeat, and as a result, I don't think that this is going to come up very often for players. Holten is back. However, Holten is back in a safe way. Holten will now have incursion events in it. However, they are no longer going to be in predictable locations. And as a result, it'll just be like any other zone in the campaign, rather than being one that would allow you to just completely and utterly go berserk with the incursion temple. Atziri's chambers now correctly connects to any room placed next to it. This is a godsend. This has just been an absolute mess, the way that Atziri's chambers connect to things, and people just have no idea what you're meant to be able to place there. So they're fixing it. Atziri's chambers, if you're wanting to run Atziri, it'll now be much more reasonable to do so. Now, this one is the big quality of life improvement. It looks like a nerf, and some people look at this and say, hey, this is a nerf, this is going to brick my existing temple. No, it's not. This is simply a quality of life change. The temple now requires a minimum of one room placed each run before opening. And if you've got a hyper optimized temple, you might not want to place a room at all. However, this is only there to ensure that players don't accidentally open the temple before placing rooms and to better guide new players in their first temple. You can bypass this restriction if you want to, and people that have got a highly optimized temple are going to want to do this a lot, by holding control while clicking on the Run Temple button. Gamepad users will instead get a confirmation prompt that they must agree to. So essentially, all this is a quality of life change, but it's one that people are misreading as a major nerf to existing top-end temples. After this, there's several lines that are about just updating the way that the mechanic is explained to players, and a fourth one of these lines specifically to the worst case of this, which is Atziri's chambers. So there's now clarification on how you unlock this room. That is being added, as well as a bunch of other little bits of feedback throughout as to the way that the temple mechanics work. Likewise, you have the temple destabilization keyword, which is similar. After this, there's a number of bug fixes that are of moderate impact. Fixed a bug where some monsters inside the Vaal temple were not receiving the intended amount of monster effectiveness. The fun thing here is that this is not clarifying whether this is a buff or a nerf to those monsters. The intended amount could be 60%, and they're currently receiving 20%. If that's the case, then this is a buff. Or alternately, they could currently be receiving 150%, and in that case, this would be a nerf. So it's not really clear as to which of those this is. We're not going to find out until people start complaining that, hey, I'm no longer getting 110 divine orbs per temple, I'm now only getting 70. GGG, please fix. Why do you hate casual players so much? And yes, there will be comments along those lines. A number of bugs related to temple medallions exist, and also transcendent limbs could be kept after your character goes splat in certain circumstances. Next, we have the general changes section, and this is on the smaller end, because the biggest single change in this patch is down in the bug fixes. The character sheet now displays how much item armor, evasion, and or energy shield you have. Skills which reserve spirit now display their final modified spirit reservation on the skill information pop-out. This is a huge quality of life improvement. Added buff names to the buff hover information on enemies. Passive skill tree notable anointment displays no longer require the player to first pick up a distilled emotion. These can be viewed by holding Alt while hovering over a notable passive on any character. This is an absolute godsend when you're making a second character, and I think actually double, triple, quadruple godsend for those of you that are making replacement characters in hardcore after your first character has a little bit of an accident. Next, we have some changes to balance monsters and bosses that are found inside the Trial of Chaos, the Ultimatum content. The damage that is dealt by Balak, the Sky Sphere, is being decreased. This is absolutely needed. That thing was crazy. And at the same time, increasing the damage that is dealt by Uxmal, the Beast Lord. What I think they're going for here is that you don't feel like RNG is as devastating or as beneficial when you're running your first Trials of Chaos in order to ascend. Instead, all three bosses are meant to be about equal in danger, and this is intended to fix that. Quadrilla monster variants, these got nerfed in an earlier patch. They're getting unnerfed, and it's not clear how much they're getting unnerfed. They definitely got overnerfed in the past, and I think what they're probably going to try to go for is something where characters that feel quite tanky, that they can survive a hit from Silver Fist, but the characters that feel squishy, they go splat if Silver Fist looks at them funny. A couple other bosses are getting nerfs here, Vornas the Fellflame and Morvac the Infernal, who I think were very, very dangerous ones. And after that, I think there's a number of really minor things that are worth having a quick read through, but that won't affect very many players. After this, we have the single biggest change in the entire patch. Fixed an issue, a bug, where the Immured Fury wouldn't spawn. So what is the Immured Fury? The Immured Fury is a bonus boss that you will get. This is a very lucrative boss to defeat, because every time you defeat it, you will get a Fracturing Orb. These were not spawning at all. They're not meant to appear in every single cleansed area, but when you do take out a Nexus of Corruption, some of the zones that are around get an implicit that says this zone contains the Immured Fury. Now, the Immured Fury was just simply not obeying that and spawning when it should. So Fracturing Orbs were incredibly rare as a result. Just this note being included in the patch notes has already resulted in a drop of something like 40% in the value of Fracturing Orbs, and I think they're going to fall further, because ultimately, cleansed areas aren't crazy rare, and the Immured Fury is definitely not crazy rare to get when you're exploring a cleansed area. So this is a really big change. This is probably the single biggest change that's present here. After this, a really funny bug. Amanamu's Gaze and Queen of the Forest were preventing the movement speed modifier from sprinting unless you had both of them. And then if you had both of them, it seems like they were working. So the intention is that you get the movement speed modifier from sprinting, whether you are using 1, 0, or 2 of Amanamu's Gaze and Queen of the Forest. Abyss Atlas passives that were applying to depth chance, they were not applying to boss depth chance. This is something that's being fixed so that they will work the way that they're intended to work. A number of other really minor things come up next. For example, something about the Spies of Deshar, Madeline Waterways, and Solitary Confinement not having guaranteed rewards from Fate of the Vaal encounters. Then after this, we have something where Abyssal Eyes were playing up inside Moroya Invictus. This is a very important change if you are using Moroya Invictus on your character. Abyssal Eyes will now do what you think they're meant to do. A number of other minor changes here, but a very important one as well for the Abyss passives again. This is not the only fix that's taken place to the Abyss passive tree, but this one's very important. You had the option to spec into monsters loyal to Amanamu, monsters loyal to Ulaman, and this was quite a popular node in Solo Self-Found in particular. Well, these were having the reverse effect from each other. So if you chose the one that said monsters loyal to Amanamu, then you were instead getting Ulaman, and vice versa. That's being fixed. They're now going to do what they're intended to do. Some of you, of course, will always have a look at patch notes and do Control F for Headhunter and wondering whether this item is getting nerfed or not. This item is not getting nerfed. It is getting a visual fix because previously it was sharing visual effects with the Flesh Puppet unique, and that was unintended. So this is just a visual change. It's still going to do exactly what it did in the past. Other than this, everything else is very, very minor. For example, if you really, really, really want to use an Orb of Chance on a Mana Flask, you can now do that, but you probably don't want to use an Orb of Chance on a Mana Flask. You just now have the option to throw away an Orb of Chance if you wanted to do so, and the same thing with certain Life Flasks as well. So a couple of things that previously were bad choices, but you weren't able to do, are now bad choices, but you are able to do them instead. And of course, there's a number of little crash fixes and a common client crash on Xbox, so hopefully that improves things for our console friends. Anyway, that is the patch notes for 040D. Like I said, this is a moderate impact one, and the single most important thing is the Immured Fury. This means that when you get a cleansed area, it's going to be worthwhile going through and looking for Immured Furies, going and farming them, getting those guaranteed Fracturing Orbs. This is going to be absolutely wild for a bit with the Trade League economy, because Fracturing Orbs have been crazy rare all league, and now they are going to cease being crazy rare because lots of people have been sitting on these zones with the Immured Fury in them. And I have just submitted to the Twilight Reliquary Palm of the Dreamer as a unique item there, so who knows, if you get extremely lucky, maybe you'll loot one of those out of a Twilight Reliquary key. It's not been added yet, it's not even been approved by Grinding Gear Games yet, but potentially might be there for 041 whenever that comes. May your Vaal Orbs have interesting results.